Whose rights are they anyway? Oh, Steve White's 89. There seems to be some drama with Masters of the Universe at the moment. A YouTuber called Spectre Creative made a video talking about the Origins and Masterverse lines, suggesting that they were going to be ending soon, that they'd be winding down between now and April due to copyright issues. And that is a fairly confusing issue that people have been talking about for a while in relation to Master Universe. Like a lot of franchises that have existed over time, there are different rights to different companies and different licenses for the same rights, and it is a bit messy and hard to understand. Now, to start off with, Mattel created Master Universe, and when they wanted to promote the show for TV series, they created a different contract with Filmation, and Filmation had some rights to those original characters and to the cartoon and so forth, which sort of created the first sort of divide. And I think then there was a second contract for She-Ra, and then when they did the Master Universe movie, there was a contract for that. And they all seem to have not different owners, but well, some have different owners, but it's all over the place. And the main sort of argument here is that Scott says that during the 90s, when Star Trek, when He-Man was in a bit of a dead period, Mattel actually sold the rights to other companies, and then they eventually ended up with Universal. Now, the argument to that is that it wasn't the overall like brand rights that were sold; it was just the rights that Filmation owned, and that was in relation to the Filmation characters or look to some of the characters, and that is what has changed and moved around, and that Scott is just confused. But what Scott says, and other people have said this online as well that I've seen, but I can't really verify who a lot of these people are, is that when he was working on Master Universe in the 2000s on the Classics line, that they actually were paying royalties for every figure to other companies, not Mattel, because other companies owned the rights to those toys during that time. So, and there are other people who claim, people who worked on the 2002 series who claim the same thing, that they were paying rights to other companies, not Mattel, that Mattel had sold the rights and other people owned them. Now, when I've tried to look into this and work it out, it is a bit confusing. Now, one of the things that Scott was saying was that Universal owns the what do you call it? Well, they own it as a property, while Mattel has the toy rights. They will revert back to Universal. Sony has the live-action rights, and other people are saying that Universal only has the Filmation rights. So it is a bit confusing, because why would the rights revert back to Universal if they weren't the originators? But at the same time, if they owned them and were just licensing them out to other people, because apparently Mattel had like the first rights option where they would have they'd be the first choice. They go to them first about making any toys or products, and then other people would get an option to license them if they didn't want them. And the idea is after this period, and they revert back to Universal, that Mattel would have to bid like anyone else to get them, but Universal could choose to just stay with Mattel and keep making them. So it's a bit confusing, and it's very frustrating because people keep telling me that I'm lying, and no, I'm not lying. I watched some videos, and I assumed this guy was telling the truth, and I saw other people confirming basically what he was saying, and considering there are different rights for the live-action rights and the Filmation series rights, it didn't seem that strange for there to be different rights for He-Man. So for the original creation, and like I said, there are people who say that Mattel only owns the toy rights, whereas Universal owns it as a property as a whole, and they're just leasing out part of that, the toy, making the toys to Mattel. So I'm really not sure. Now, some people have brought up some strange arguments that annoyed me. Some people saying, oh, they're selling well, so he's obviously lying. He didn't say that the line was ending because they weren't selling, although he's been fairly cynical about how well they're selling and pointing out sales and clearance and so forth. He was very clear that they would be ending because of copyright, not because of sales, that people wanted to see them and wanted to keep making them. and that's why he was hoping that maybe they would negotiate something. And like I said, it's quite possible that if Universal does hold the rights, they could just stick with Mattel and have Mattel keep making them. It may not really be an issue, but they may also, if they do get the rights and own the rights, may just want to put them all under one umbrella and reboot it all and do their version of Master Universe. So it's kind of confusing. Like I said, it's frustrating that people are attacking him and attacking me, and there's a lot of people just sort of saying, well, I know. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Where's your proof? They're saying, well, where are the contracts to show that things were sold? I'm like, well, where is the original copyright to show that they own it and they never lost the rights to it? I mean, if these are so easy to come by, why can't you produce them as well? So no one has any receipts. And one of the arguments that Scott had was that collectors have an inflated sense of importance with the industry. They think that they are the most important people to the toy industry, whereas the toy industry will tell you that it's children and parents that are the most important to them, and that adults, adults who buy toys are like a quarter of the market, but that has increased recently. So it's kind of hard to tell if these are just people with big egos saying, well, this is important to me, so therefore it must be important, and I think I'm right, just because a lot of people are just narcissistic and think that they know everything, and they don't need to actually prove anything. Now, I've taken a look at this, and I haven't been able to find, like I said, any receipts on either side, really. There do seem to be people in threads and articles suggesting that there were different rights through the 90s and the noughties, and that would seem to support what Scott's saying. But yeah, it's confusing, and I just wanted to make a video just stating my understanding of it, because I don't like being told that I'm a liar and that I'm just, like, I don't know what people think, that I somehow am trying to support this guy in some sort of fiction. I'm like, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not producing anything from Mattel. I'm just buying the toys like everyone else. I'd like them to continue. There are a few more figures that I would like, but at the same time, I kind of want it to end at some point, because I don't want this to go on forever. I sort of want to just work out which ones I want and buy them and have the set and be done. Because most toy lines don't last a long time, and they do sort of end, so you get to sort of have that end point, and then you just focus on maybe collecting the ones you missed or getting better versions, or whatever. So yeah, not exactly sure what's happening here, but I notice a lot of people piling on, a lot of people saying, well, I don't want to talk about this, I didn't want to touch this, but here's my video. I didn't want to even talk about this issue, but here's my live stream. So they've seen the views and that, and they know that there's a lot of debate and argument, and like I'm getting a lot of comments, and most of them are people attacking me and saying I'm wrong. And it's like, I first was sort of like, I guess, doubling down on like, well, this is what I was told, and it's like, well, that's what I saw. Why would I think this guy was lying? Why would I assume anything negative? I just assumed this guy knew what he was talking about. He had worked as a brand manager for years, at least 10 years, up until 2016. So it was only a few years ago he was actually on the inside with Mattel. So he obviously knew what was happening. So does he still have connections and sources like he says? I guess so. Other people claim that they have sources, people from the other companies that have worked with Mattel. And why would Mattel lie? Well, obviously Mattel is still trying to sell He-Man toys, so they're going to want to hold that front until the last minute. Until they can no longer sell the toys. They don't want people to, stop buying because they think it's the end or something, or I don't know. I mean, I can see why they'd be motivated to, maintain the illusion that they own the rights if it makes them look like, the owner and the people that, people are going to automatically look to for He-Man products. So they've got a dog in the fight. So aside from his ego, I don't see what dogs Scott has in the fight. He may just be doubling down and not wanting to be wrong, but he seems to say, well, I'm happy to admit if I'm wrong, just like I'm happy to admit if I'm wrong. If it turns out that Mattel does own the rights and nothing's changing, that's okay. I just hope they have a plan for the line, and eventually they sort of fulfill it and finish it and end it, and then, there's the end line. But other people want to go on forever, and they want everything to be redone and so forth, but I don't know where it's all going. But I'm nearly at 10 minutes. I was going to try and do a 5-minute video. It didn't happen. I've probably forgotten something I meant to talk about. But yeah, I just find some people being quite aggressive, and like I said, no one has receipts. So it's very easy for you to say that I'm wrong or lying, but unless you can prove that you're right, why should anyone listen to you either? So yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the whole situation. Rights are a huge issue in entertainment and in toys, and they can ruin a toy line because people want what they want, and if you don't own the complete rights to it and you give them something similar, it's not the same thing. And that seems to be what happens a lot with a lot of things, because it's either cheaper or just unavailable, and people don't get what they want. They sometimes are sold what they want, but they don't actually end up getting it. So yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in April. This is obviously going to come to a conclusion at some point and a resolution at some point, but in the meantime, let's just see what happens.